Gopijana bhalabha giribharadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopijana Bhalabha Giribharadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivrajagacharya Ashtotara Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Nitai Gaura Premanandi. Oh glories to the assembled devotees, oh glories to the assembled devotees, oh glories to the assembled devotees, oh glories to Shishiguru and Shiguranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 11, General History. Chapter 5, Narada concludes his teachings to Vasudeva. Text number 42. There's nothing in the board, so if you have your telephones, okay, good. Swapadamulam bhajata prijasya Tyaktanya babasya hari paresha Vikarma jatchot chotpatitam katanchit Dhunoti sarvam hridishani vishta Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya Tyaktanya babhasya hari paresha Vikarma jatchotpatitam katanchit Dhunoti sarvam hridishani vishta Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya Tyaktanya bhavasya hari paresha Vikarma jachotpatitam kathanchit dhunoti sarvan hridisha nivishta. Please chant. Sopadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari paresha vikarma jachotpatitam kathanchit dhunoti sarvam hridisha nivishta. Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari paresha vikarma jachotpatitam kathanchit dhunoti sarvam hridisha nivishta. Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari paresha vikarma jachotpatitam kathanchit dhunoti sarvam hridisha nivishta. Swapadamulam bhajata priyasya tyaktanya bhavasya hari paresha vikarma jachotpatitam kathanchit dhunoti sarvam hridisha nivishta. Swapadamulam, the lotus feet of Krishna, the shelter of the devotees. Bhajataha, who is engaged in worshipping. Priyasya, who is very dear to Krishna. Tyakta, given up. Anya, for others. Bhavasya, of ones whose disposition or inclination. Harihi, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Paraishaha, the Supreme Lord. Vikarma, sinful activities. Yat, whatever. Cha, and utpaditam, occur. Kathanchit, somehow. Dhunoti, removes. Sarvam, all. Hridi, in the heart. Sanimvistaha, enter. Translation and purport by the disciples of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. One who has thus given up all other engagements and has taken full shelter at the lotus feet of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is very dear to the Lord. Indeed, if such a surrendered soul accidentally commits some sinful activity, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is seated within everyone's heart, immediately takes away the reaction to such sin. Purport. In the previous verse, it was clearly described that a fully surrendered devotee of the Supreme Lord has no need to perform ordinary worldly duties. Now, in this verse, it is revealed that devotional service is so pure and potent that a surrendered devotee of the Lord has no need to perform any other purificatory processes. As described in the 6th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, a surrendered devotee has no need to perform prayaschitta, or atonement for an accidental fall down into sinful activities. Since devotional service is itself the most purifying process, a sincere devotee who has accidentally stumbled on the path should immediately resume his pure devotional service at the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus the Lord will protect him, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 9:30. Apichetsu duracharo bhajatam man ananyabhak sadur eva samantavya samyabhyavashito hisha. The word tyaktanya bhavasya in this verse is very significant. As stated in the previous verse, a pure devotee realizes clearly that all living entities, including Brahma and Shiva, are parts and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus have no separate or independent existence. Realizing that everything and everyone is part and parcel of the Lord, a devotee automatically is not inclined to commit sinful activities by violating the order of God. However, due to the powerful influence of material nature, even a sincere devotee may be temporarily overwhelmed by illusion and deviate from the rigid path of pure devotional service. In such case, Lord Krishna himself, acting within the heart, removes such sinful activities. Even Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, have no power to punish a surrendered devotee who has accidentally committed sinful activities. As stated here, Krishna is Paresha, or the Supreme Lord, and all secondary lords, such as demigods, cannot threaten the Lord's personal devotees. In his youth, Ajamila has been a pious Brahmana engaged in the service of the Lord. Then, by bad association with a prostitute, he became practically the most degraded man in the world. At the end of his life, at the end of his life, Yamaraj sent his Yamadutas to drag away the soul of the sinful Ajamil. But the personality of Godhead immediately sent his personal associates to save Ajamil and demonstrate to Yamaraj that no secondary personality can disturb the personal devotees of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Kunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati 9:31. The argument may be raised that the Smriti Shastras states Shruti Smriti Mamai Vagye. The Vedic scriptures are the direct orders of the personality of Godhead. Therefore, one may ask, how can the Lord tolerate that his orders be occasionally neglected, even by his devotees? To answer this possible objection, the word priyasya is used in this verse. The devotee of the Lord are very dear to the Lord. Although the beloved child may accidentally commit an abominable activity, the loving father forgives the child, taking into consideration the actual good intentions of the child. Thus, although the devotee of the Lord does not try to exploit the Lord's mercy by requesting the Lord to free him from any future suffering, the Lord, by his own initiatives, free the devotee from the reactions of accidental fall downs. The causeless mercy of the Lord upon his devotee is his Paramishwaryam, or supreme opulence. Gradually, the faithful devotee becomes free, even from accidental fall down, because simply by remembering the lotus feet of the Lord, what to speak of by actively rendering service to Him, his heart is purified. Although the surrendered devotees of the personality of Godhead may sometimes appear to be affected by mundane attitudes, they are inevitably protected by the merciful Lord and are never actually defeated in life. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Ummilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Ramapada Swami Iti Namine. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirveshesha Shunyavadi Pashatyade Shatarine. Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So these are two very important verses. The previous one is oftenly quoted by the Acharyas and by Srila Prabhupada in terms of presenting, in this verse also, both of them, presenting the ontological power of exclusive devotion. It's a very important thing to understand. Srila Rupa Goswami established the power of pure devotional service. In the beginning of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the first quality of pure devotional service is that completely wipes out any type of material entanglement, suffering, eliminates that. So, the power of pure devotional service is what we hear here is not something that is we can say a moral exception. You know, this type of understanding that is presenting in these verses is not necessarily a moral exception or some sort of ethical permission to commit sin or some a special arrangement for the devotees to have a little range in terms of falling down. But it's the ontological, metaphysical, in one sense, power of pure devotional service. It is by pure devotional service that this type of arrangement is there. So, in one sense, we can say this is a thesis for this verse. That's a key thesis. This verse is not about ethical permission or moral exception. It's about a change in ontology, or the relocation of existential shelter. This is something that is presented like that. The whole thing, from the perspective of the devotee, is to understand that we have this aspirational understanding that we have to achieve exclusive devotion to the personality of Godhead. And in that position, then that's a qualification that is there for being completely under the protection of the Lord, even in the situation of an accidental fall down or some type of sinful reaction that may be there. Is the last instructions of the Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharmam Parityaja Mam Ekam. So that Ekam Saranagati, or that exclusive surrender is the qualification for the Lord to fulfill the promise that is given to Arjuna. Mamekam saran aham, what is it? Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam saranam aham twan sarva papebhyo. That you don't have to worry about sarva papa. He will free you from all kinds of sinful activities. But the qualification is exclusive devotion. So in one sense, it's something that was established in the previous verse, which we heard yesterday, that one requires that abandonment of all shelters and taking exclusive shelter of the Supreme Lord. And today, there is these two terms that is used. Swapada mula bhajata, which is the same thing, exclusive shelter, ekam sharanam. The word by word of that is, swapada, the lotus feet of the Lord becomes the single exclusive shelter of the devotee. And the other important term that is used that clears this qualification or this exclusive is this tyaktanya bhavasya. Now, this one is quite something to understand, because the term that is used is bhavasya, which is one's bhava is, one's mood, is how you approach the world, how you process the world. It's an internal state, your bhava. And when it's used like that, it's the exclusive understanding, or the exclusive, it's an internal state that my Lord Krishna is my only shelter. Is the position of complete saranagati, complete surrender. So it's a particular disposition of full surrender to the Lord. So these two are the qualifiers for receiving this type of very personal mercy of the Lord, that He immediately, even if something is committed accidentally, that's the other term that is used, accidentally, then the Lord immediately, from within the heart, takes care of that. So, this whole arrangements have nothing to do with behavioral. One may say, if we do these types of activities, then I get this type of mercy. It's not behavioral. It's not about a kriya or an activity. It's not mentioned here. It's bhavasya. It's an internal disposition. So it's not behavioral. It's not an activity. It's not ethical. It's not, necessarily pious. It's any of these external things. It's nothing like that. It's an internal disposition, the qualifier. So that's why the word ontological is there, or metaphysical, which is basically the understanding of a state of being. It describes a state of being, a reality, like it's like that. So the questions comes there that, and it's sort of important to understand that if a devotee is in this position of full surrender, saranagati, perfectly situated in that space, how is that a devotee can deviate? And the question was asked. And in the purport is described by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada that the power of material condition sometimes can overwhelm a devotee. So there is something that we understand here by this verse, that there are certain devotees who are in the position of Saranagati that are still not free, fully free from the influence of material nature. And we know also that pure devotees, there's a particular descriptions of devotees, that a pure devotee never falls down. A perfected being never falls down. And then we hear in situations in which actually an associate of the Lord, a pure devotee, may commit something that appears a deviation, then one immediately understands that that's induced by the Lord for actually establishing his purpose through the aging of the devotee committing something that appears to be a deviation. And, we see that Arjuna falling into illusion. It is understood or explained by the acharyas that this is induced by the Lord. That a devotee that is a personal associate of the Lord, it doesn't fall into this type of delusions. But then there's other types of devotees that is still qualified under this, because otherwise it would have mentioned so. That here is not induced by the Lord, but is accidentally committing something abominable. And of course, we hear the case of Bharat Maharaj, who deviated and then have some pretty heavy reaction from that. And it's explained, he was in the position of Baba, and he still was overwhelmed accidentally, like that. Or even sometimes one may argue, not necessarily accidentally, because this is almost like there was intent out of whatever what needed to be dealt at that time with his Bharat Maharaj's internal position. So, very important thing to understand also, that where does that leave many of us who still have to struggle to control the influence of material nature into our actions and our internal disposition. One of the things that many of us have to deal with is our maintaining different shelters. Throughout a conditioned life, we learn to take shelter on certain type of activities, on certain type of relationship, on certain types of mindsets to find some relief, or to find something in which you can feel at ease, or feel protected, or feel temporarily happy, relief from misery. Some people find that shelter in literature, music, movies, food, drugs, sex. Some people do like that. Find different shelter, relationship with family. I mean, recently, my father, he is the patriarch of a family, a large family. His birthday was celebrated, 90 years old. And he is beloved by a large family. And he is just so absorbed in family. That's his whole world, the family. And, Latin families are like that, are very, very into the family. And that's his world. That's his shelter. That's everything for my father. Family. And so all these shelters are there. In conditional life, we get accustomed to that. And when we come to Krishna consciousness, it's about start to replacing those shelters for the exclusive shelter of the Lord. So that means that for certain type of devotees, in general, we have this division of 3 classes of devotees: Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. For the Uttama, it's clear. The Uttama is perfectly situated in pure devotional service. The Uttama Adhikari does not fall. Prabhupada explains that even if he's in a room full of naked women, he won't be disturbed. He doesn't fall. So the Uttama Adhikari devotee is perfectly situated in pure devotional service. Pure devotees. Then we have the Madhyama Adhikari. The Madhyama Adhikari is when devotion becomes nishta. It becomes steady. Meaning, in the breakdown of the Madhurya Kandambini of Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when one reaches the position of Madhyama Adhikari, that starts when you come to the stage of Nishta. And the stage of Nishta is when 75% of unwanted things from the heart, they're eliminated. They have been eliminated. So that means that your faith is strong and your devotion now becomes steady, Nishta. This verse also qualifies Madhyama Adhikaris, because Madhyamas is not they're not fully finished with the influence of material nature. They still have 25 more to go. But they're steady in their shelter to the Lord. Now we see that also in the Bhagavatam, Srila Sutta Goswami, when he's saying, what is it? Nashta praeshwa bhadreshu. Almost. That means there's still something there. So, but they qualify. Now the kanishta is aspirational. The thing, that doesn't qualify for that, because the kanishta still have to deal with purifying the different shelters that are maintained. The kanishta still have to deal with the influence of the false ego, with what is Srila Rupa Goswami described as asat trishna, right? Asat trishna, which is a taste for sense gratification. Still have to deal with pride, with envy, with loss. So all these things have to be purified, but you have to very purposely deal with those. And as you advance, then all of these things move from gross to more subtle, to more subtle, and more subtle. And in the more subtle things, you have to deal with the situation of you becoming enamored by position, by power, by lava, puja, and pratishta. Pride, arrogance, all these things are there. And then you have to deal, as you go through all that, with offenses. So the kanishta doesn't necessarily qualify for what is expressed in these verses. The qualification is ananya bhak, is exclusive devotion. Now, that doesn't sound so encouraging for some of us that still have to deal with the false ego, But the Lord is very kind, because the Lord extends His mercy through His devotees. So a kanishta who is under the shelter of one of those exclusive devotees, then you're safe. You can advance and you can be fully under the protection of the Lord, because you're under the protection of a devotee of the Lord. Therefore, the instruction that Krishna gives us is that one must search for one of those exclusive devotees and fully surrender to that devotee. Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya. One have to come to that position. And in that shelter of the lotus feet of a devotee, one can actually receive the full protection of the Lord. The protection of the Lord comes in so many ways for Kanishta Adhikari devotees. Sometimes the Lord exposes your anarthas to you and to the world. Sometimes the Lord is very thoughtful. Sometimes it's required, sometimes it's not required to be shamed publicly. Sometimes it becomes, an internal work. and you addresses those things. But sometimes when the devotee is so absorbed in whatever delusion is there, then inevitably the Lord does something that is more drastic. And in general, it's a public display of your iniquities. And then, in general, sincere devotees, they become jolted by that and then go on the right track. We see that in so many, through the stories in the Bhagavatam, Lord Indra committing this and this and that, and then having to have some public, situation there's so many, sent as a pig, having, the sinful personality chasing him, covering him with anyway, the stories. So these public things, so sometimes it happens to the devotees. So in general, we can see that in this verse, we're not talking here about a license. We're not talking here about a special arrangement for the devotees. We're not talking here about even the Lord being favoring those who are doing devotional service. We're seeing here about the essence and the ontological power of pure devotional service. Pure devotional service will actually allow this arrangement. When the devotee is engaged in pure devotional service, and of course, we know the description that Srila Rupa Goswami said of pure devotional service, Anya Vilashita Shunyam, is pure devotional service that is devoid from any type of mix of things, is unalloyed. So when pure devotional service is there being practiced, this situation is in place. So it's because of devotional service. It's nothing to do with a devotee doing a particular thing. It's the fact that devotional service acts like that. That's how, at least, I understand like that. So so it's not a license. It's not something even that we can feel secure on that. Oh yeah, we have to see it. If I am still dealing with purifying myself, I have to see this as aspirational, as an instruction that is there. Something that I have to move towards. And the way that I can get there is taking shelter on such devotee. And pariprasnena sevaya. I have to inquire, I have to serve, and I have to be fully surrendered to such devotee. And in that way, I'm safe in the path. And if we're very careful, especially with Vaishnava etiquette, then we can very smoothly move towards. Vaishnava etiquette becomes the fundamental practice that a sadhaka have to be very mindful. because offenses to the devotees is what can completely undermine your sincere effort. And so it's almost that we have to be always with that. It's like having, how you say, like a red light or an alarm that sounds every time there is something close to that. Immediately one have to sort of backtrack. Be very much aware that as long as my false ego is influencing my perceptions, my process, and my activities, I have to be very aware that I could sort of cross a line and do something that is offending a devotee. So therefore, I have to be constantly, the counteract of that is always cultivating the qualities of humility, tolerance, respect, and curbing my false ego. Trinarapi Sunichana process. Very, very much aware that these things can happen. And when it happens, when we become sort of, if I have my my radar trying to see, okay, make sure that I don't do these transgressions, offending devotees. Then, but I know it could happen at any time because I'm not aware, I'm conditioned. When I'm conditioned, I'm not being able to immediately see. I may be someone who is very passionate, and in my passion, with the eagerness, with the intention to serve, I may do a transgression. The intention may be good, but I may do a transgression. So, therefore, I have to have my radar, if something happens, and then I have to address it. And I have to internalize. We have the situation, and most likely, we face this. Sometimes it takes two to tango. It's not a one-side thing. Other devotees also have false ego and also have things to address themselves. And that's that devotee problem, but I have to focus on my problem, which is my false ego. So if the other devotee is in their false ego and take offense, even, or is not tolerant, well, the devotee have to deal with that. But from my side, I have to deal with this too. So I have to be constantly introspective. Am I acting in my false ego? Am I doing something that is self-centered? Am I being thoughtful about, the consequences of my actions in other devotees and their services? So I have to be constantly internalizing those things. And in general, that is maintained, or that internal disposition, that disposition itself is, you can extend it to this mercy of the Lord, this pari, what is the term that is used? Pari, see here. The term is used. Yeah, no, I can't find it. But it's the mercy of the Lord. Then we actually in one sense, receiving the benefit of these instructions. The Lord is immediately, from within the heart, allowing us to understand what's the right thing. And that only happens when we're situated, for Kanishta devotees, when we're situated in the shelter of the lotus feet of the devotee of the Lord. When I'm fully situated in serving my spiritual master, and my intention is very much focused on the service of my spiritual master, then that disposition will be there. If that disposition starts to be clouded by the desire that I have of position, of power, of all these things, of pride, arrogance, all these things, then it's going to be going this way. And the merciful Lord is going to slap me. And then in the slap, I go, oh, yes, I'm humbled down, and then go on the right track again. In general, that's what happens. In general. But if there's some serious offenses, then that's the end of it. Especially if the offense is towards the spiritual master. Any comments or questions, dear Prabhus? Sarjan?
In describing the particular situation of the Kanishta Adhikari, and commenting that being devoted to serving the lotus feet of this one spiritual master is allowing for that disposition of being very internal and I guess cautious, you could say. So could one infer that if in fact the external behavior is egotistical, disrespectful, that indicates that the focus on serving the lotus feet of the spiritual master has gone astray? Because if the disposition is dependent on that.
In one sense, I would say at times it depends, In our experience, we see that devotional service is very personal and is very much is tailored to all of us, maybe differently. So it doesn't work like equal for everybody. There's a principle that is a fundamental principle that applies for everyone. But how that manifests, there is no, or how the Lord's mercy in a particular devotee is arranged, I believe that is not, we cannot say so, we can generalize. So it depends, I think, I would say that. In one sense, it is expected that in the beginning we all have to deal with that. In one sense, we're all in the same boat. So, from my perspective, if I start to become disturbed about some other devotees' activities, then I have to internalize and see, why am I disturbed? where is my tolerance? Where is my humility? Where is my respect? Where is my false ego control thing? So how can I improve in that? How can I, so is you bring it back to oneself. So how the same thing may apply in some other devotee is not so easy to understand. But in principle, one can say that if a devotee is not applying this introspection and this self-analysis and assessment, is a devotee that needs a lot of help. And in one sense, Krishna will deal with that. I think we have to avoid, in one sense, being in a position of judging other people, or devotees. Sometimes we tend to do that because, especially when we are at the receiving end of some devotee actions. So in that receiving end, we have to internalize and see, how can I be more tolerant? How can I be more humble? How can I be situated in the shelter of my spiritual master and the service of the Lord, without being affected by, Matra Sparsas to Kunteya program, the coming and going of this situation or that situation, in the form of some devotee, in the form of the government, in the whatever form it takes. That's a thought. You have any other thing, Prabhus? Naveen? Yeah? Jitendra? Good. Thank you so much. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki